Welcome to Tradecast, everyone, being beamed to the world from Belia Trading offices in Lima, Peru. My name is Manolo Delgado, and I'm Belia Trading's marketing director here in our offices, as I said, in Lima, Peru. If you want to learn anything about me, please look me up in LinkedIn, but of course, the most important is our guests. First, let me remind you of what is Tradecast in case this is the first time you join us. Tradecast is a series of interviews with top international executives in all areas related to international trade and international business. We will touch on many different subjects. Let me just mention a few. I'll try to be quick. Product development, global sourcing, manufacturing, logistics, quality control, free trade zones, international trade law, shipping, free trade agreements, WTO negotiations, sustainability, entrepreneurship, and many more. Just so you get excited as we are, we have guests from all over the world, and I'll try to go east to west. We will be speaking with people and professionals from Japan, China, Hong Kong, Singapore, Vietnam, Sri Lanka, India, Turkey, Germany, Switzerland, Spain, Denmark, Brazil, USA, Barbados, Bolivia, Mexico, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru, where I'm sitting right now. If this is the first time you join us, I'll just remind you of the structure of the show. First, we talk about the person, our guest, their past, their academics, their professional life. Then we will talk about their company. So they explain to us what the company does, et cetera, et cetera. And then we will address the issue at hand and talk about the present problems and maybe the future trends and solutions. Of course, the present and the future might get a bit mingled, but well, that's the way it is. And at the end, and I urge you please to stay until the end, because this is a very cool part of the show, we will close with the famous questionnaire by French journalist Bernard Pivot, apostrophe à bouillon de culture, sorry for my French, where you will find a series of questions that are very interesting, and I really recommend you stay until the end. One quick disclaimer, our guests speak for themselves, that they not necessarily express the opinion of their companies. Just before I introduce our guest, let me give you our daily trade fact. The top exports of Japan are 83 billion in cars, 31 billion in integrated circuits. And their main exports are mineral fuels, oil, and distillation products, accounting for 154 billion, and electrical components for 113 billion. Since I mentioned Japan, is just a perfect way to introduce our guest today, Wakako Oshima. She's joining us now from Tokyo. She's the founder and CEO of Asteri Group Corporation. Wakako, sorry. I always say the name with a different intonation. Wakako, thank you so much for being here. Konnichiwa.
Thank you so much, Manolo. Konnichiwa. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm so thrilled.
Thank you so much for your time. Let's go first, as I said, about you, okay? A big part of our audience is younger professionals that are either finishing university, doing master's degrees, looking for a way to get into this world of international business or international trade. So I think you and the other guests I've had are really good role models of professionals that have traveled all over the world and are in, I would argue, the top moment in their career. So let's talk a bit about you. Can you please tell us where were you born? What did you study? And what was your first experience going to live abroad outside of Japan, please?
Great. Thank you so much, Manolo. Thank you, everyone, again. And well, my name is Wakako Oshima, and I'm based currently in Tokyo. And when I was in high school, I wanted to be a journalist, going to different places in the world and write about them and meet with different people. And that's why I wanted to first learn political science in the United States. And when I was in my last year of high school in Japan, I just decided to quit and go to the States because I was not having so much fun here in Japan back then. And when I moved to the US, I couldn't speak a word of English and I didn't know what the teachers were saying. And, but after a year of studying there, they told me I needed to do one more year because the system of high school in Japan and the States differ, right? So they have 4-year system, and I had to do 1 year, and I said no to that again, and I quit. And so I took GED. I don't know what it stands for, but I took that exam and passed. So I went straight to the university, right? And then I studied political science after graduating from the university. I just, thought of, oh, actually, sorry. So during my university years in the States, my parents decided to move to the US, and they started operating Japanese restaurant. It was a small family owned restaurant, and I was helping them establish the company and the restaurant and the whole 9 yard. And during the whole process, I learned something that sort of changed my path of career path in a way that I didn't foresee when I first went to the States. So without knowing what's written under the contract or what you're negotiating, then there's just no way of moving forward with any strategic planning, right? Which is not very positive when it comes to wanting to do a business, especially in an environment where you don't know the culture, or the common sense might differ from where you're coming from. So I decided to become a lawyer, not the journalist, but now a lawyer, and especially in the world of international trade, because my parents were from Japan and trying to do business in the States, where culture is so different, and the language and the whole thing, right? So I wanted to be a bridge between different cultures, and when we look at the earth, it's just one big community, right? So I just wanted to become a bridge between not only Japan and the rest of the world, but entire planet.
That's wonderful, and I applaud you, because it takes a lot of guts to do what you did, and not only end early in Japan, but also kind of not follow the what you were supposed to do in the U.S. Let me ask you, Wakako, because it's not so common. Trade law is not an area that a lot of people, even lawyers, even consider. You've mentioned your reasons why, but I wonder how did it? You finished your schooling in the U.S. You went into university in the U.S. May I ask you where? Which city where you were?
My university was located in a town called Radford. It's called Radford University. And I went to law school in Richmond. It's the capital of the state of Virginia, Commonwealth of Virginia. And I chose international law because I was always fascinated by how human history is developed upon the movement of goods, services, and people, and across borders, right? And I wanted to become a part of the future of multilateral trading system, which back then the future seemed a bit brighter than maybe, how it looks now, especially due to the geopolitical tensions and conflicts that we currently have. But I still have not given up hope.
Certainly, there's a bit of a backlash against globalization nowadays, and probably back then, yeah, it was like a new thing and everybody wanted to embrace it. Can you tell us a little bit more about the first steps in international law? Which did you go into a law firm or a company? Because as I said before, trade law is a very small area within the world of law. So was it a very difficult thing to break in and start actually practicing trade law?
Actually, I found a law firm in Washington, D.C. after well, actually, during when I was studying for the bar exam, I was going to Washington, D.C. every weekend to look for jobs. And I found this law firm, very small law firm with a couple of counsels and partners, which specialized only on international trade litigation. So they defended companies that were sued by the USTR for anti-dumping or countervailing duties and all those things. And I was able to get a job as an associate. I was very lucky. And actually, after more than 20 years, we still get in touch. And every time I go back to the States, I just really love, and I feel grateful that I got that first job in Washington, D.C.
And how many years were you working for this law firm?
My visa was for 3 years, but I was there for 2.5 years and came back to Japan.
Okay, and once you went back to Japan, how about there? Did you get back into trade law? Were you able to keep going in that direction?
No, that's the thing. After coming back to Japan, I was working at another law firm, which was New York based, and I was practicing US securities law, which was like, so out of what actually was studying or aiming to become, right? And then during that period, I was actually recruited, or I was headhunted, or what's the term? But somebody from Walt Disney, through our mutual friend, came to me and said, we have this position which was cross business sectors, cross business units within the Walt Disney Company in Japan, which was a chief privacy officer, because that was the year when privacy law was first enacted in Japan. And I thought it was a very exciting role because anything to go horizontal, I felt very passionate about, in addition to international trade.
That's very cool. In Disney in Japan, and it's true, you guys have a Disney World there. And then we met in 2006 in the World Trade Institute. So at some point you decided, okay, I've had enough of corporate work. I'm going to go back to the classroom and revamp my knowledge of trade law in a way. So you decided to go to Switzerland, get this master's degree in international trade and economics, the MILE program, and then you went back to Japan. What happened after the master's?
So after the degree in Switzerland, where I met you for the first time, I went back to the Walt Disney, and because they had this position open for me, and I worked there for about a year more, and then I left for another company, and I started working as the head of legal department for different international, multinational corporations. And during that path, somewhere along the way, I started to feel like the responsibility of all these big multinational corporations, right? And what they can do more to the society that they are what's the best term, Manolo? Not the exploitation, but they're making money out of, right? The markets and
interacting for a reasonable profit. Let's try to be diplomatic.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why I wanted to start researching and studying more about the world of CSR and SDGs. So that's when I joined the United Nations Global Compact in Japan. And I did a research project during 1 year, which helped me a lot to understand the world of SDGs and, how the poverty reduction was the main goal of it and all those things. And yes, let's just cut it here.
Yeah, because that's a perfect transition. Before we start getting into that area specifically, Wakako, corporate social responsibility, CSR, SDG, sustainability development goals. We will transition and talk about Asteri Group. Just before we go into that, I'd like to because you have such a varied cultural experience, working in different countries with different cultures for companies that are not necessarily from the country where you're based. For the benefit of our audience, I'd like to hear your opinion on what do you think is the best way to be a leader, to lead a team in an international scenario? What characteristics do you think a leader should have to be a good leader in that type of environment?
Great question. Thank you, Manolo. I would always think of those great leaders who are so inspiring in my life, right? Two individuals. One is Mohammed Gandhi, and the other is Martin Luther King Jr. Those two individuals there's so many more, I'm sure, right? But it's particularly those two, in my mind, have led the lives where there's so much turmoil, right, in the history of humankind, and they never gave up, and there was no answer, I'm sure, right, that they could turn to, but they were supported by many people, and they just lived, both of these guys lived their lives on day-to-day basis with respect to people and what's surrounding them, and they never changed their way of believing in the bright future.
Lovely, thank you. Let's go now into your current objective, your current purpose, your current life. You did all this. You wanted to be a journalist in political science, went into law, trade law, corporate world. Now you found yourself in the UN and the more multilateral system, and now eventually, and please let us know, how many years ago you founded Asteri Group, and what is the main purpose of this new venture?
Thank you. So when I was working at one of those multinational corporations, I decided to establish this Asteri Group corporation because I wanted to focus the rest of my life on doing something good. Put it simply, doing something good for the world, right? And our principle is to connect the world in any sustainable manner, meaning sustainable international trade, sustainable investment, and sustainable tourism. And we also try to connect different sectors, as I said earlier about how I love and feel passionate about going, cutting cross lines, like, linear, because everything is so linear in our world, and I just love to cut it through.
Try to see the connection between different areas of a company, or
Yes.
social or political, and try to be in the middle of this, thinking more of an ecosystem, right? Just stop thinking of things that are just isolated in the little capsuled world. Okay,
yes.
So you found, how long ago did you found Asteri? So it's been 7 years?
7 years
7
this
years
year.
Okay. And your main focus then, to be clear, is, okay, you mentioned investment, trade, and tourism. So you address, correct me if I'm wrong, or please explain to our audiences, you touch on the different stakeholders that are around these main industries, if you want: trade, investment, tourism. It could be from the private sector, it could be public sector, it could be multilaterals, it could be NGOs, and you try to become an articulator for specific projects and do the consultancy so that they put sustainability in the forefront of what they are doing. Would that be a fair judgment? Maybe you can give us some examples of some projects so we understand a bit better.
Yes, thank you, Manolo, so much. You just put it correctly, and I don't know if I have anything to add, but just to give you an example, we are currently working on the World Expo, and actually we try to work on any non-political gatherings or events at the global level. Although Olympics and Paralympics, they can be used as a political tool, but putting that aside, that's a side story. We would like to use those opportunities as a way of helping the world come together, not just on one-off basis, so that all those tax money and time and effort put together is just gone after the event is over, but our aim is to have it on continuous basis, as in sustainable, to utilize all the tax money spent to create a new added value to the relationship that already exists between one particular country and the rest of the world. For example, we had Tokyo 2020 last year, and our company helped those local governments all across Japan connect and exchange online with the countries where they had athletes coming over to Japan, or the athletes who could not come before the Tokyo 2020 event, so that we could connect them via online. And so after the event is over, we're still supporting them to keep building on their relationship, so that they could develop their local business, or they could stimulate the local business together with the other country. Does that make sense?
It does. It must have been super challenging in the middle of COVID to try and precisely to connect people, when the only thing we wanted is to be as far away from another human being as possible. So, okay. And I wonder, your main clients, or if you call them even clients, because in this world they might have other terms, stakeholders, who are they? Are you more, is it more the private sector that gets in touch with you? Is it specifically more for specific events like the Olympics, as you said? Or is it NGOs? What is your main pool of clients, if I can put it in that more business-oriented way?
Well, actually, Manolo, it's everyone, to be honest with you, because that's what we are trying to aim at achieving, is the what's the word? Like a new way of collaboration, creating a way of having those different sectors come together to collaborate, not just in words, but in action. So one of the projects that we're working on, other than Tokyo 2020 or World Expo, is for the academic world to come together with the local governments and private sector. For instance, World Trade Institute, that you and I went, and also the universities in Japan. Now we're trying to connect them, so that in the world of decreasing population, especially in Japan and some of the world out there, we just there should be a better way for us to say, oh, please come to our country, or please come to our school. But there could be a more constructive way for, let's say, for example, two different universities to collaborate in a way they could exchange students, or they could exchange ideas about how their local municipalities could collaborate together with the academic world, so that after graduation, those students can go to work at local governments or private sectors. And that's how we're trying to, that's the type of world that we're trying to create.
And I wonder, because it even sounds to me that this could be even something that comes from you, from Asteri, going, okay, I want to engage this project, and it's you that is knocking on doors, public, private, NGO, civil society, et cetera, to tell people, hey, guys, why don't we sit all around the table and move forward on this objective that is great for the world, these new trends that, of course, the world is changing so much, and clearly the way that things have been handled for the last 50-odd years is not sustainable anymore, and we have to find other ways. So that's another possibility. It's not only people knocking at your door, but you taking upon yourself to, I'm going to create this, and I'm going to get the people in the table and convince them and work together, et cetera, et cetera. That's a fair assessment.
Exactly. That's what I have been doing for the past year, especially, and working towards the World Expo that's happening in 2 years almost in 2025. April here in Japan. So we are knocking on the doors of different embassies in Tokyo.
Must be so difficult and frustrating. I admire you because that brings me to a question. How are you feeling in terms of the reaction? Because, of course, being a salesman or a saleswoman is difficult per se in everything. But I wonder, how are people reacting when you're selling something that is strange, right? Because we all know it's needed, but in a way we don't want to invest in it, time or money. I do remember, I'll be brief on one experience I had back in 2008. We would go to mainland China from Hong Kong, precisely trying to sell corporate social responsibility initiatives with a project that the company that I used to work called Planet 2020. And we're already in 2022. But the reaction, of course, not of course, I don't know, but in mainland China in 2008, believe me, we were not received as heroes of any sorts, right? So, and it was funny because I even worked with a British person who was looked with a lot of skepticism from the Chinese, right? Really, you're gonna tell me how to develop when you guys did what you did in the 1800s? So it's a tough sell. Yeah. So I wonder, how is it working for you? What, if you can share with us a bit of what strategies, if anything, you're using in terms of achieving those very difficult goals of getting people involved in something that we all know that as a conglomerate of humans need, but as individuals, it's very difficult to take those needed steps.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you so much, Manolo, for sharing your experience as well, because I fully resonate. I could not agree with you more. It's a tough skill, definitely, for sure. And we, every time we knock on a door, they are, but I guess things have changed to the point that they're willing to listen, at least, right? Whereas maybe 10, 20 years ago, they'll be like, we don't want to waste time with you, right? But they're willing to listen, at least, and they like to know what, for example, because my background is in law, they, especially private sector people, they like to know the risks. If they are not active on promoting sustainability in their business. For example, there's a growing trend, Manolo, in Europe where those NGOs like Oxfam, those huge ones, and people in their communities, like thousands of people together, they file a lawsuit against big companies like investment companies, banking group, or this energy giant, right? And they're winning. They're starting to win. And the courts are saying that, for example, in the Netherlands, Shell was sued. And the court actually, Shell is, Shell has set the target to reduce CO2 emission to a certain level, but the court came back and said, no, the level that you're trying to achieve is not enough, right?
The court said that. That's a major change in...
Isn't it?
Sure.
That was actually the first case in the whole world regarding, when it comes to the court telling a private sector, even if they're working on it, on the sustainability up front, court said, no, that's not enough, right? So I think it's starting to change, and it's a very tough journey, to be honest with you. It's not easy, when it comes to money flow, it's not easy. But I try to talk to people, those legal cases out there, and also the flow of money is changing as well when it comes to sustainable investment. A lot of money is moving now towards people who are trying to do good for the world, and where there's no existing market, thus there's no existing money flow, but big companies and investors out there are now starting to look into those areas.
because one of the things here is one of the difficulties or the things that has changed, I think, in this world relating to sustainability and the private sector is who's driving the car or who's pulling the I don't know what the proper metaphor would be, but before companies were okay. If I see, okay, we as a consumers have a lot of power, right? Especially in the last 15 years of social media, we can actually cause heavy damage reputationally to companies, or you just deciding to buy something that has a environmental marking on it, an NGO seal of guarantee of fair trade, etc. The multitude that are out there now. So it's before it was kind of like, okay, the consumer has to show the private sector that is on your best interests, because we will use the power of our wallet to harm you in a way. But what you just told me is incredible. It's like the legal system. You're not only risking losing clients, you're risking getting sued by a class action in the US or whatever, and paying much higher consequences. So that's a very important change in paradigm from what I just learned from you. But in essence, still, just to try to make it a bit simpler, who is the driver nowadays in this push for more sustainability? Let's say that we can separate the world in the multilateral system, TNC, transnational corporations, civil society, let's assume organized through NGOs. Who is, the driver trying to put this in the agenda? Because I think a lot of people always perceive like it's not the responsibility. And of course, I'm generalizing because the world is very, very different. Now, I'm sure this is more important in Sweden than it's in Bangladesh, to all due respect. Our priorities, our societies are different. But in your perception, who is, out of those three, who is leading the charge for a more sustainable world, if I can make it as ample as that?
I would say civil society, because it depends, everything depends on each of our inception of the world. That's what the world is created upon, I believe. So, and then the government is there to, quote unquote, support us, right? Not, that's not what they do most of the time, but that's a side story. And private sectors, of course, that are out there doing business, but without consumers like ourselves, there's no business, right? So I'd say civil society is in the driver's seat, and those legal system is starting to support the voice raised by the civil society.
Because none of this is supposed to be stuck or written in the stars. The societies move, generations change. I'm sure that new generations are a lot more aware. And even though I'm a bit skeptic about social media, because I think it's proving to have a lot of bad consequences in terms of dividing societies and polarization and this and that, surely the possibility of people organizing for good things is there. So hopefully people like you and younger societies, and we all, the people that are listening to us right now, can play their part. I just want to close this, Wakako. You shared with me a sentence that the Director General of WTO said, and I'm going to read it. Maybe you can try to explain it to our audience. The quote is, "Coexistence that accommodates strategic cooperation alongside strategic competition." Sounds a bit difficult to get it, but what is the core meaning of this new concept?
She talks about re-globalization, right? And the phrase that you just shared with us is at the heart of this re-globalization in her mind, I think. And how I view it is that every time I speak in front of people, I try to explain or express this planet, our world, as one big community, right? As I said earlier. So there are neighbors that you don't get along everywhere in the world. But we have to have strategic, cooperative way of living together. Otherwise, especially going forward, otherwise we might perish together, like Martin Luther King Jr. said. So that's what I think she means when she said, accommodate strategic cooperation alongside corporate
Strategic competition. Yeah.
competition. Yeah, because how we have developed our history for the past 100 years or less since the industrial revolution is to try to extract natural resources, build something, own something, spend money, and just toss it in the trash, and then do this cycle, right? But going for that's where the competition started. But going forward, it's just not simply sustainable.
Yeah, I think that the idea that you can compete but cooperate on more global issues should be a no-brainer, right? It's difficult. I feel for you, and I admire, of course, what you're doing, because I know it must be super challenging. Definitely difficult. The world has to reinvent himself. I never heard that expression, the reglobalization. That's interesting. We could speak, I'm sure, for hours about this, Wakako, because it's this relates to so many other issues about politics, and it's a very, very complex matter. And sadly, we do have to finish Tradecast at some point. Maybe on another opportunity, I invite you and we can talk about something different. But in closing, I'd like to go through the questionnaire that I mentioned first, the famous questionnaire by French journalist Bernard Pivot. So if I may ask Wakako, what is your favorite word?
Harmony, deriving from my name.
What is your least favorite word?
Can't think of any.
Oh, okay. That's good. That's a fair answer. What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
When I'm in the nature.
Okay. And what turns you off?
Lack of balance.
And well, this is one of my favorite questions. Of course, you can give me one in English or in Japanese. I would please give us at least one in Japanese. Okay. I think the audience would love it. So, what is your favorite curse word?
What the H or what the F?
Okay, you're so polite. You can say it if you want. I can even bleep it if you want. Is there one in Japanese that you could share with us?
Nothing close. No.
But okay, but another one, not related to what the A or what the F, anything. I just want to hear a Japanese curse word.
Kso toka.
Okay. Thank you. That's lovely. What sound or noise do you love?
Sound of nature.
Okay, and what noise or sound do you hate?
Too much noise.
Okay. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
A farmer surrounded by animals.
Lovely. And what profession would you never like to take part in?
Don't know until I try.
Okay, that's very wise. Okay. And the last one, and again, thank you so much, Wakako, for your time. I think everybody that sees the Tradecast is gonna leave better than they arrived an hour ago. Let's put it that way. In closing, if heaven exists, what would you like God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Did you enjoy your life to the fullest? Chill out and have a beer.
Okay, good. I'm sure there will be plenty. Now, would it be an Asahi or a Budweiser from your US days? Hopefully an Asahi, yeah?
Asahi super dry, I'd say, because that's the journalist who was on the commercial when I wanted to go to the States for the first time.
Okay, Sapporo one I like to. Anyway, we could speak up hours. Hopefully we can have you again, Wakako, at some point on another subject. For now, we thank you. Arigato gozaimashita, if I say it.
ありがとうございました。
And thank you all for joining us at Tradecast. Thank you, Belia Trading, for this space. Goodbye from now from Latin America. We wish you a successful day. Bye-bye.